Hi everyone, my name is Madison Harpham, and today I will be going over Chapter 11 for the Sidman reading for this week's discussion. So Sidman first starts off the chapter by stating that avoidance can take bizarre or neurotic forms. Sidman mentions the work of Sigmund Freud and how he suggests that behavior patterns occur because of this need to protect ourselves from the anxiety that coercion provokes. All of us adapt to coercion, some better than others, but we can cope with this through escape and avoidance. However, this escape and avoidance behavior can interfere with everyday functioning. And even if someone is really, really good at avoiding something, there is still a price to pay, whether that is socially or personally. Sidman mentions that it is dangerous to say that stating all mental illness is avoidance behavior because it would simplify those problems. The origins of someone being mentally sick factors between person to person, case by case. So it may be environmental factors, but for other people, it may be genetics. Whoever it may be, whatever it may be, we can't just generalize that someone is engaging in avoidance or escape because they have faced something that is coercive or have been in a coercive situation within their lifetime. This could be very harmful because if we were to automatically assume that, oh, this person is mentally ill and they're probably because they've faced coercion and now they're avoiding things, if we were to generalize that to everyone, that could potentially prevent them from getting proper treatment and care. And it just simplifies the problem when the problem should not be simplified. When we are working with a situation like this, it is best to look at the contingency of the avoidance behavior with someone who is displaying this. This chapter, Sidman then goes on to list defense mechanisms against coercion. So the ones that have been listed in the chapter are phobias, reaction formation, sublimation, projection, displacement, regression, obsession/compulsions, conversation disorders, amnesia, fugue, and multiple personality. So since there are so many different types of defense mechanisms, I have decided to highlight on some that I thought were most interesting, because if I were to go through and explain every single defense mechanism that Sidman wrote in this chapter, this video would extend past 10 minutes. So the first one I thought was interesting was projection. So Sidman writes, although a community punishes and deems something as bad, it can still bring success. For example, underhanded commercial/social competition, fraud and lying within all forms of relationship, whether that be political or business or interpersonal. Following this, sometimes we act in ways that is kind of learned fear in others, or because of this complex punishment, intense punishment within society, we also find disapproval within ourselves. Sidman says that one way to avoid this, uncomfortable and disapproval within ourselves or learned fear within others is to avoid it by projecting it onto other people. He gives an example that says that liars are punished not because others believe them or not believe them, but because they cannot believe others, meaning that the liars are projecting their own problems onto other people, so they're just starting to lie because they can't believe other people. And although projection isn't shown in a lab through observations, we can clearly see it happening. I'm sorry, although projection isn't shown in a lab through observations, we can clearly see it happening just in any type of setting, whether that be clinical or within like an interpersonal personal relationship. Another defense mechanism that I thought was pretty interesting that he wrote about was regression. So he says that an adult that has grown up will sometimes act like a child to avoid certain punishment, hardship, or deprivation. An example of regression would be a 4-year-old urinating in their pants, despite that they already know how to use the bathroom, because their mother is giving attention to their other siblings rather than giving attention to them. So they revert back to peeing in their pants because they want their mom's attention and they want their mom to take care of them. Another example he gives would be a teenager avoids doing his chores by whining and just giving his parents a hard time, although these chores are something that would normally be required from adulthood. They're just avoiding it by whining. That would be regression. We can demonstrate regression by teaching an experimental subject several ways to earn food, and then we punish them or we stop reinforcing them in the most recent act of them acquiring food. Thus, the subject will quickly go back to one of its earlier earnings of food, rather than using, I guess, the most recent, most reinforced way of earning its food, if that makes sense. So he mentions that to help this, we can teach the patient more effective ways of adapting to situations to prevent regression. Sidman also writes that research into normal behavioral adjustments into coercive control has led the possibility of understanding cures or how we can kind of like understand or manipulate mental illness. He compares this actually to how researchers and doctors, I guess, conduct research and studies on ways to help with defeating the flu. So it's pretty common for, I guess, psychologists and researchers to do this. He says, although many factors can contribute to mental illness, it is important to view mental illness as conduct, and that we have to see changes in conduct in order to evaluate or treat mental illness. This is where the role of a behavior analyst can come in. With behavior analysis, we can attempt to understand the function of this abnormal behavior through examining its contingencies. So that is essentially my summary of Chapter 11. Thank you so much for watching my video and for the discussion. My questions for you guys are, give me 2 defense mechanisms that you found to be the most interesting within this chapter, and also why you found these to be interesting, and give an example of what they are, give an example of them, and then also kind of correlate, like tie that together with their relationship with coercion, if that makes sense. So 2 examples of what defense mechanisms you liked and why, and then also an example of these defense mechanisms and how coercion kind of plays in to that example. I hope that makes sense. And again, thank you so much for watching my video, and I look forward to reading everybody's responses.